This episode's brought to you by Affordable Drill Towers. Founded in 2016 by our good friend Steve Sanguidoce, a retired Houston, Texas firefighter, the Affordable Drill Tower was designed and built with functionality and versatility in mind for any training ground. As a standalone training tower or an add-on to an existing burn building or Connex setup, the Affordable Drill Tower packs a massive punch at an affordable price tag. With over 50 towers across the country, from Massachusetts to California, Montana to Texas, professionally engineered, NFPA and ISO compliant, the Affordable Drill Towers brings the versatility to your training ground. From Main Street USA, the small town fire company in their back parking lot, to the training grounds of the largest metropolitan fire academy, the Affordable Drill Tower fits the bill for price and functionality. Check them out at affordabledrilltowers.com. And two things I like to talk about also when talking about our friends over at Affordable Drill Towers. One, their customized training program. They have the ability to bring some of the best talent from across the country to your home turf after the install of the Affordable Drill Tower. Designing a customized training program for you and your department, Steve will facilitate some of the biggest and brightest names of the American Fire Service to come in and work with you and your department. And secondly, and I think most important, is Steve's belief in need over greed. The Affordable Drill Tower company gives back to not-for-profits that support organizations in the American Fire Service. Organizations such as the Joey D Foundation, which is near and dear to Steve Sanguidoce's heart, as well as many other not-for-profits that he takes a part of. He takes great pride in providing funding for organizations that push this job forward. So check them out, Steve and Dennis over at Affordable Drill Towers. Send them an email at info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Check them out on social media, and their YouTube page is kicking butt with great information, training nuggets, and information about their towers. So check them out, Affordable Drill Towers, and let them know Jeremy over at National Fire Radio sent you. This episode's brought to you by Ridgeway Leatherworks. Ridgeway Leatherworks is a firefighter-owned and operated business, as well as a family-run business, and that's what I love about it. Rob and his family are passionate about their customer service and the quality product and craftsmanship they put out for the emergency services. Rob's been on the show. We've been to his business. We've seen them in action. I've even tried to hand paint radio straps. I promise you, it is not as easy as what the final outcome looks like. The product is so good and so clean and crisp, and yet, man, it takes that steady hand. Rob's become a near and dear friend of our podcast, and you hear that over and over when we talk about our sponsors, that they're friends, supporters, and that's what this networking community is all about, is supporting one another. Ridgeway Leatherworks, Rob Meyer, crushing it. Quality and craftsmanship is number one. Customer service is right there with it. From custom radio straps, universal radio holsters, chin straps, flashlight holders, anti-sway straps, and locker tags made out of leather, there's plenty of opportunity along the way when you deal with Ridgeway Leatherworks. So check them out at ridgewayleatherworks.com. Find them on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And tell Rob you heard about him on the National Fire Radio platform, and give him a little plug and tell him keep up the good work. We need to support our firefighter-owned businesses, and especially family-run businesses, where his two daughters and his wife help out day in and day out along with his other employees. So again, Ridgeway Leatherworks, check them out at ridgewayleatherworks.com and find them on all your social media channels. Hey everyone, Jeremy, National Fire Radio. Welcome back to the episode today. Today is going to be straight fire. And I mean that in a lot of different ways, but the guest today is retired Atlanta captain Danny Dwyer. You might know him as Danny Would Go. He became thrusted into the national spotlight because of a grab that he made back in June of 2019 under heavy fire conditions. We're going to get into that, but the intent of the conversation today with Captain Dwyer is talk about what came from it. And it's hard sometimes when in the fire service you go doing your everyday job, but the topic or the situation thrusts you into a national spotlight without your want or need or desire to be there. And Danny, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today. I truly appreciate this, and I've just enjoyed my time already talking with you even before we hit the record button, man. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Jeremy. I really appreciate the call, man. This should be a good one. I really can't thank you enough for give me the shot.
100%, man. And like, but your message is super strong. I've seen you talk elsewhere. I've read a lot of articles. I've done some homework and so on. We have mutual friends. This is really the first time you and I've really had a good chance to really rap and learn who each other are. But I think you bring forth a tremendous message. And, we were just chatting about a couple things before I hit the record button. And I'm like, all right, stop talking. We got to get going here because there's so much, to talk about here. I don't want to dwell just on the fire, right? In June of 2019,
Good.
you were assigned to an engine company, I believe, at the time, right? And you guys
truck actually that night.
You were on the truck that night.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So maybe just a little bit of background then. Instead of me painting the picture, maybe you could just paint the picture a little bit, and then I just want to kind of dive into this whole after the fire and talk about you and your career.
Okay, so just a brief overview. I was covering ladder truck that night in Northwest Atlanta. We were dispatched for a house fire just before 1 o'clock. While we were en route, we came back with possible entrapment. Engine company arrived first, had heavy fire out the Bravo Charlie corner on a one-story brick on a basement. Nothing much to it at the time. Did have a confirmed entrapment after the captain did a 360. We were assigned interior search by the first arriving incident commander and then the first arriving battalion chief as well. Pushed in right behind the engine, made a quick search, found the victim about 15 feet inside the front door. Unfortunately, due to some fire conditions changing, she expired shortly after we pulled her out of the house. And a couple days later, there was an after action that kind of didn't go the way that any of us really anticipated it. And I was accused of freelancing. And obviously, everybody knows what that definition is.
Yeah.
Accused of freelancing. I had a disagreement in terms with the battalion chief on a very professional level. And a few days after that, I was charged with freelancing, failure to, I think it was, I forget the exact charge, but basically not doing what I was told.
Yeah.
So that was June 28th of 19. It drug on into February of 20. The investigation did. Eventually, I was given a 48-hour suspension, which I served. And shortly after coming back from the suspension, I decided to retire from the city of Atlanta. So I came off the books there in June of 2020.
So 24 years in the fire service, 15 years with Atlanta, you retire, and now you're riding as a truck captain in the medium-sized city north of Atlanta. And so you're still riding the seat, and you're still going to fires.
I am. A few more fires would be fun, but right now, we're taking it where we can get it.
For sure. So I want to break this down a little bit because what I think is really interesting is you've been to hundreds of fires in your career, and I'm sure you've made or been involved with removing people from fire buildings in the past. You've been under heavy fire conditions. You've worked as a truck boss, working behind the line, in front of the line. I reviewed the video. We watched the people across the country because this incident got thrusted into the national spotlight. And I want to talk about that because you weren't expecting it, didn't want it. I'm sure you didn't want it. And the fallout from it became almost like a topic in the fire service between safety culture, discipline and following SOGs versus doing the right thing and aggressive firefighting and search culture. And I think that there was a real divide that went down the middle. And I think that in the time of the fire service, when this situation happened, I think that really was what filled the bag enough that the bag popped, right? The bag ripped open. I think your incident brought light to a topic in the fire service about the safety culture versus aggressive firefighting. And I think that that's really the topic here that I want to dive into today with you. But watching that video, there's heavy fire. When I see that video, you're already outside the building. It looks like you have the victim with you at the threshold. And I watched that line being pushed coming back out. So did that line go through that front door and then they're hitting fire behind them as they made the push in?
Yeah, this is something that wasn't really hit on a lot in all of the after actions, the interviews, any of the stuff that hit social media. So, and please understand, and I'm sure anybody that's listening to this that has got more than a cup of coffee on the job understands that the fire conditions that video showed was post flashover. We were there pre flashover.
Right.
Obviously, nobody's gear and nobody is going to be able to push into that as it was shown right there. So what had happened about there was about a 51-second time period from the time that the rescue started from me going in the A side front door behind engine 22. It was about 51 seconds from front door to the victim and back out. On the way back out, because of some door control issues, the entire living room of the house flashed. We had fire out the Bravo Charlie corner, so the left rear corner of the building on arrival. You know, it looked like a bedroom fire. Come to find out, the kitchen was in that back corner, and so it was pushing out the eaves on the Alpha side pretty, I mean, moderate. It was working. There's no doubt about that. But we had smoke about chest high in the front door. So conditions were great. We had about 3.5 feet of good air. As soon as I walked in, took a knee, wiped my face piece off, took a look with the tick. You know, I could still, all her furniture was intact, rugs, you know, furniture covers, the whole 9 yards. So it was really good conditions initially. The engine had pushed in front of me with two members, a captain and a nozzleman. I don't think because of what we now know as flow path, I don't think they saw the fire issuing down the Bravo side of the house. So when they pushed in, they went straight down a hallway, took a left, and were heading towards that back left corner. I gave them a few feeds of slack and pushed. I was probably 6 to 8 seconds behind them making entry.
Got it.
So when I took a look to the left, because the front door was towards the right side of the home, the right front side. When I took a look towards the left, there was some fire rolling around a cased opening. Come to find out later, it was coming from the kitchen down the Bravo wall through the dining room and starting to curl around into the living room. It was headed back towards the front door, of course. Grabbed her, started making my way out. The building flashed. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many flashover simulators I've been in teaching and whatever. It was a flashover to me. I don't know that it'll ever be defined, but there was some sort of hostile fire event. I think we can all agree on that. Unfortunately, during that, nobody or the incident commander was unaware that the engine company was inside, even though there was radio traffic. We're pushing in with these guys. You know, they gave us truck 16. You're on primary search with engine 22. Somehow in the mix of everything happening, accountability seems to have been lost. But when we got her into the front yard, the first thing I did, I looked at my driver and I was like, "Where's engine 22?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "They're still inside the building."
Yeah.
And the stream that you saw coming through where it had vented through the roof and out the windows was them fighting their way back out of the building.
Yeah.
And
so the fire came around. The fire came around the B side. So they pushed to the rear of the home. Fire comes back around them as you exit. Right. Yeah. Cut them off. Okay. Got it.
And I wish I could have sent you, and I'll send you the pictures, but it burned off probably about a 12-foot section of key combat hose. It burned the outer jacket completely off.
Oh, no kidding.
The only reason that those guys are still here today is the nozzleman did a fantastic job. He left that bail wide open.
Nice. And
he had a very, very seasoned captain with him. It's probably one of the best firemen I've worked with.
Yeah.
And if it weren't for those, I mean, they were very lucky.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful that both of them are still here. The captain just recently retired. He and I ran together for a number of years, a bunch of good fires together. They were at the engine company, a single house about 2.5 miles from where I was assigned at 16 at the time. And very lucky, very lucky.
Yeah, the reason why I bring this up and the reason why I wanted to paint that picture, right? Because anybody that can Google this after we're done talking, after they listen to this episode, they're going to look. And when you think about all the discipline that we're going to talk about that came down and then life after that and so on, when you look at the fire conditions on that video, all you see is post flashover. So you're thinking, did he actually belly in under those conditions to make, like, what was the situation? So I wanted to make it clear for the listeners that might not be overly familiar is that you had workable space, livable space, survivable space that you searched, made a grab, and exited the building with the victim. Because, looking at the very short video that's on YouTube and online, it paints a very different picture than what you and I just talked about. So that's why I wanted to set the stage so people really understood what it looked like. So after all that, you do what you do every single day, right? And then you get penalized for that, right? It comes down to, a career of fighting fire, providing, services to the communities that you ride in, protecting your own brothers and sisters. And then you get jammed up because of something that you think you did right. And you did do right. Tell me about that process a little bit. How do you compute that? Like, how do you break that down and go, man, am I wrong? Like, did you have any self-doubt? Let's start there. Did you have any
No,
self-doubt? Okay, good.
never. And at the end of the day, this boils down to a cultural thing within the fire service
Yes.
itself, where, uh, you know, there's safety, and nobody wants to lose a guy. God forbid. I hope I never have to write that letter, make a phone call. Like, I don't, I want you to come back with your fingers and toes and no scrapes and bruises. I don't want to deal with that. But at the end of the day, we are all taught from day one to extend measured risk, and I
Yes.
hate the whole risk management, safety profiling and survivability profiling, but people lean on that too much. And, I'm sure there was some negative stuff, publicity put out there. I tried not to look at any of the comments on
Sure.
Facebook, and I saw a few of them, and it was all from guys that, I don't care,
No,
but
I get it.
at the end of the day, like, this was caused by some, basically, like we talked about before. I didn't take a knee and kiss the ring and say, Chief, I'm sorry for what happened. He accused me of freelancing, and the way that I was brought up is, if you're given a vent assignment to go up to the roof and cut a hole, and you decide to take it upon yourself and go interior for a search, that's freelancing. When you give me an assignment to make an interior search with an engine company, and I do that, that is not freelancing. Where they got upset about it is my two truck drivers. We're on a 102-foot tractor drawn aerial, a tiller truck. So I've got a front end man and a tillerman. And both those guys had to get dressed, get their tools and equipment. And when you only give me two people and I don't have a fourth person on the truck, our MO on every fire was, hey guys, meet me on the A side. I'm going to go get us an assignment.
Yep.
That's what we did every night. That's what I told them that night. And they did exactly that. They got dressed. And like I said, there was about 50, call it a minute in and out.
Sure.
That was them coming up. You see the guys coming up the front steps to get her off the porch. That's them coming up to give me a hand. So they did exactly what they should have in the time allotted. It just so happened that when I got in the front porch, the captain on the engine said, Danny, you're coming with me. We got to get a search. We got one trapped. I was like, hey, Cap, no problem. I'm right behind you. And do I want a 6-month probie to break off from a line and start searching a house that's rocking? No. But given where I feel comfortable and my skill set, my abilities at this point in my career, taking a quick left and crawling 12 to 15 feet in a straight line was not an issue.
Right.
I didn't make 4 turns, go up a flight of stairs, get lost in some warehouse. We're talking about 1,100 square foot frame.
Yep.
So that's where a lot of the brass, when we had private conversations with some guys after, and they're like, listen, we just don't want this to be a precedent to where these young guys are thinking they can do this. And I'm like, well, you just tell them that they can't. That's not, I don't know that I would have made that decision 5 years ago. I hope I'll make it in 5 more years, but I definitely don't think I would have done it with 6 months on the job.
Yeah.
So I understand their point, but at the end of the day, this got down to some hurt feelings. And because I didn't agree and kiss the ring, I told the chief, I was like, listen, we've been friends a long time. I respect you, but I respectfully disagree with this.
Yeah.
It's not freelancing. And I think the nail in the coffin for me is like, look, if this happens again later tonight, I'm doing the same thing. If the conditions are the same and a successful rescue can be attempted, then we got to give it a shot. That woman was a pillar in her community. I think she was 93, had lived in the same house since the 60s, her church was within eye shot of the house. I mean, right across catty corner to her home. And, she'd been there forever. And so, not to take anything away from any other citizen, whether they're, homeless or not or anything else, but like this has been a lifelong taxpayer with the city of Atlanta. You give them everything that they deserve. You give them your best shot on our best day. And that was that. Unfortunately, she didn't make it, but you gotta give it where you can.
But you did everything you were supposed to do to provide that woman an opportunity to survive. She has blind faith. Our residents, our people that rely on us every single day, have a blind faith that firefighters are there to save and protect them. That's it.
Right.
And I think what's really important about this story and what you've gone through is the fact that you said that if it happened later that night, I'm going to do the same thing again. And I think that's super important because it speaks to, like you said, you have experience, you have knowledge. You're a truck captain in a metropolitan city. You've been to a lot of fires. You know what you can and can't do. You know your limitations, right? And if you can effectively put forth an effort to make a save or rescue on what they confirmed as an entrapment, and you were able to do it with the conditions that were present, good for you for not falling down on your beliefs and thinking that, you didn't do it right. You did it exactly the way it should have been done. There's no doubt. I don't think anybody can argue with that. I think what it comes down to is it's more of a feelings. It's more of a, we can't set precedent, but you know what? I'm sure shit like that has happened many nights before in Atlanta.
And unfortunately, when you're down to minimum staffing, you got to do a lot with a little, and it wasn't. There was a lot of conversation during the civil service hearing where everything, my suspension was overturned in June of this past year.
Right.
And cleared of any wrongdoing, whatever. I'm no longer there. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. 2 years later, 3 years later.
Right.
It's
exactly.
crazy. Yeah.
And they were like, well, you left two guys by themselves. I'm like, my tillerman had 28 years on the job.
Yeah. Come on.
And the front end driver, my tractor guy, had like 13 or 14 at the time. I
Right.
didn't leave two children. I think my lawyer put it perfect. He goes, he didn't leave two 9-year-old kids at Six Flags.
That's right.
With their armbands on outside. These are grown men, and they were outside the building.
Grown men that if they were in your position, they probably would have done the same damn thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yep.
No doubt. And I spoke to a very close friend of mine that was riding on our shift commander car that night. And, his whole thing was, he's like, listen, when we hear there's entrapment, I'm en route, and he's got the city accountability sheet taped to the glove box in his car. He knows where everybody's at. And he goes, when I hear truck 16's interior, I'm assuming you're there with you and the two gentlemen that were assigned to the truck with you that night. And I was like, Chief, I get it. I'm sorry. I can't, unfortunately there was a very small window for a successful rescue.
That's
and
right.
I felt that it needed to be jumped on.
Yeah.
And we had done that. I mean, they're not going to like it, but it is what it is. You do that when you got a 3-man truck, that's what happens.
There's no black and white fire department. There's no black and white fire. We live in the gray.
You got to go get an assignment, and get it done, and start working, or at least, it is what it is.
So anyway,
that was that.
So you hit on it before because you talked about aggressive firefighting versus this safety culture and freelancing, quote unquote freelancing, right? And all of this. This topic, your situation got thrusted into the headlines very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way you saw that coming. There's
not at all.
There's no
was
way.
Not prepared. Still not prepared.
Yeah.
Even, every once in a while something flares up on social media. I'm like, God, just let it go.
I mean, it got titled. It was crazy.
Lot.
It was Danny would go, right? And then Danny would go became this mantra, this chant for aggressive firefighting for them, right? That whole topic of for them, which I don't even know where that came from because it's always been for them. So I don't know why we had to title it, but now everything is for them, but it's always been for them, right? And I think that the struggle is for a lot of people in the fire service is starting to believe that this safety culture is starting to take away from for them. And it's starting to shift the focus on safety and security other than putting ourselves out there to effectively perform rescue and put ourselves in the line of danger for our citizens. And so I think that's where your situation hit right at that time. And Danny would go became this mantra across the fire service. I mean, people were putting stickers out there. Like it was crazy, right? Talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, you went home after that shift or after that tour, and I'm sure you felt ridiculously conflicted. Right? Like,
it wasn't really conflicted. It was just overwhelmed.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I got the night that hit the local media and started to get rolling on social media. The union and I had made the decision to. There were some reporters with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the paper here in the city, some local news outlets that had caught wind of the incident. Were kind of waiting to hear what was going to happen. And it was decided to let them know that I was being suspended in the hopes that the fire chief would overturn the decision before the ink was really dry and reverse the suspension. Well, that doesn't happen with that organization.
No, they doubled down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I go back to the firehouse, and I didn't have anything to do with the phone calls that were made, and we're sitting there eating dinner, and the 6 o'clock news comes on, and there's my face, and I'm like,
Oh, my
oh
God.
boy. And the guys I'm working with are laughing. They're like, "Oh, you are in for it." And so we kind of giggled a little bit. And again, I was assigned to a really busy engine company at the time, and we were in and out multiple times the rest of the night. And my wife uh, texted me, I think about 11 o'clock, and she's usually in bed by 9:30. And she
Sure.
said, "Have you been on Facebook?" And I was like, "No." She goes, "You might want to get on there real quick." And I opened it up, and I was like, "Oh, what
Wow.
happened?
Yeah.
What have we done?" And unfortunately, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle at that point.
No.
And social media did what it does. I have never, I didn't know what going viral was. I had a friend of mine tell me that the next day. No, I think he said I was trending. I'm like,
Trending.
I don't know what you mean,
Oh, my gosh.
And dude, it just took off. And I mean, it got to the point I can't even. I don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah.
Was the outpouring of support fantastic? Absolutely. But I can't. It's going to sound terrible saying this. Like the messages, the Facebook messages, the Instagram messages were all awesome, but it was so overwhelming for
Sure.
some. Everybody kind of laughed. They're like, "Oh, you're perfect for this." I'm like, "No, I like to talk to people. I got a bunch of friends, but I'm not built like I just this was never in my wheelhouse. We didn't know this was going to happen."
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you got Fox News calling, Inside Edition calling, local media calling. I'm like, "Here's my lawyer's number. Here's my union president's number. Here's it." And just kept giving those phone numbers. I was like, I can't say anything. And so yeah, the social media onslaught was great in a sense. I didn't realize that how bad the fire service needed it. I guess at that point.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Why do you think this happened?
Dude, I don't know. I wish I had a good answer for you. I think it was kind of the us versus them.
Yeah.
The rank and file guys versus the newer generation of commands. I don't know.
I think
really,
you're right.
Truly don't know.
I think you're right.
Dude, it just got legs at a point where you slowly, prior to 2020, you had Cody Trestrail, Brothers in Battle, hell of a guy.
Yep.
They do conferences all over the West Coast. County Fire Tactics down in Florida, the guys in Texas. There's these grassroots fire conferences popping up all over the United States, and they're taking it back to the fire service that I started in, where you put the citizens first. Of course, you don't. This isn't. I'm not trying to get into a safety argument.
No. I get it.
You put them first. You put them first, and you go do what you're supposed to do, and stop analyzing everything so much. Just go to work, fall back on your training, and go do what you're supposed to do. It's not. They don't have to make it. It's not that difficult. And I think it was kind of that. And for whatever reason, maybe because COVID happened at the same time. I mean, this is like a week and a half before COVID hits.
Yeah.
And then everything's on lockdown and everybody's on social media. So it just got, absolutely ridiculous. And again, I can't, the support was great. I just didn't, my wife turned all my notifications off, logged me out of Facebook, logged me out of Instagram for like 3 weeks. She's like, just stay off of it. Don't look at it. But then I'm dealing with lawyers. I'm dealing with the union president and suspension this and civil service hearings. And it was just a lot to take in. Why it happened, I don't know. It is, I can rack my brain around it. I don't know.
There's no way to prepare for it, right? I mean, you went from a truck captain riding the fires that night, running out the door 20 times at 24, right? Like you're going in a busy truck to the next day. I mean, your face and actions are being thrusted across the national media, not just social media, national media. Like it's on the biggest channels, the news channels, right? You didn't ask for any of this. And not only that, but you were just doing, and I know how you are, you were just doing your job.
Right. And I didn't do, it's so cliche, but I literally didn't do anything. I hope anybody that's listening to this, are there a lot of guys at different organizations across the country that wouldn't? Sure. But I hope that all of us that are in this for the right reasons, the guys that are trying to better themselves by listening to your podcast, other podcasts, going to classes, would do the same thing. It was nothing extraordinary. I just somehow or another, for whoever, higher power, whatever, decided that this was going to be the incident, and it exploded.
Yeah. And
I see the stickers now, and the stickers, a guy that made the stickers, he donated an unbelievable amount of money to the Metro Atlanta Association of Firefighters Conference.
Awesome.
which was great. But if I see another one of those stickers anytime in the near future, it just kind of drives me nuts. And I appreciate it, I get, but I'm like, man, it was nothing. The biggest thing at the end of the day is, this poor woman lost her life. Unfortunately, she's got family in the fire service in Georgia. So there's that connection. And it just, every time it kept getting rehashed, you're picking a scab.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the organization, the City of Atlanta Fire Department, took a beating in social media, and they didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
There's guys there. There were 3 people that I think deserve that. And unfortunately, there are a lot of guys there, I'm sure, that I am friends with, was friends with, whatever, that probably disagree. I know a couple of them disagree with what happened and thought that there was motives behind it or whatever, and that's fine. We've had our discussions and everything's cool, but the organization took a beating, and I hate that, because there are people there currently, there are people in recruit school currently that don't know me, that don't know anything about that fire, that are just excited to be there like I was when I went there. And I don't want anything else. The city, people made a bad choice. A couple people dug in their heels, but the rank and file, 99% of them would do it again. They do the same thing, and they didn't. This was not their cross to bear, unfortunately, and they kind of got dragged through the mud. And I wish that hadn't happened.
Yeah, I thought something really interesting too that you said before too is doing the right thing is doing the right thing. And you said there was a moment where you probably could have made this all go away. It could have been a slap on the wrist and move on, but you weren't willing to allow yourself to put yourself in a position to not be who you are and true to yourself, right? Like, how do we, right? You said, how do we always tell them to do the right thing if you don't do the right thing? Or how, if you sacrifice your values up front, what does that mean for the next guy in line? Will he be expected to do the same, right? And I think that's a very powerful conversation. It speaks to your character, though. This episode's brought to you by Taylor's Tins. Taylor and his crew at Taylor's Tins have been manufacturing aluminum helmet fronts since 2017. With over 200,000 tins in the market, they are a leader in the helmet front space. Custom design, one-offs to department orders, they can turn them around within 24 to 48 hours. Customer service is what they pride themselves on, and they provide nothing but top-shelf product and service to their customers. Check them out at taylorstins.com and check out their full line of product offering. They've always been a very strong supporter since day one with the National Fire Radio podcast and platform, and Taylor and his crew have become dear friends of ours, and we appreciate the support. And at checkout, for a little extra bonus, use coupon code NFRSENTME. That's NFRSENTME for a discount on your order. Exclusions do apply. Anyway, check out taylorstins.com for the latest and greatest offerings from Taylor and his crew. And in the words of Taylor, stop burning up leather. This episode's brought to you by the Affordable Standpipe Prop. Let's break it down real quick. Steve and the crew at Affordable Drill Towers is doing it again. They've created this fully custom and fabricated standpipe prop to support the fire service. I'm telling you right now, this is a game-changing piece of training equipment. And I want to hop into it real quick. It is designed with a 4-inch manifold of high-strength galvanized Schedule 10 pipe. The cart and manifold are powder-coated red for a durable finish, meaning it's not just a talking piece. It's not something you tuck away on the shelf. This is a training prop that can be wheeled into the classroom and then brought out onto the training ground. And so let's talk about that. In the classroom, there's nothing better than having a hands-on prop in front of the students, in front of the fire companies that are there to learn about standpipe and FDC connections. Having that prop in the classroom allows for a great instructional lecture. And then from there, take the standpipe theory and translate it to the training grounds. You could wheel the cart out that's on casters, you wheel it out into the parking lot, and that same training prop that you just used hands-on in the classroom can now be used hands-on on the training ground by pumping into it and flowing out of it. It offers such versatility in its approach. It has a 2.5-inch Siamese connection, 7 2.5-inch outlets, 6 of which are standpipe valves, has a water motor gong, sprinkler head with a control valve, and a system pressure gauge. You can also upgrade and put 3 of the most common field-adjustable PRVs. I'm telling you right now, this is a game-changing training prop that needs to be in every fire company or training department across the country. Reach out to Steve and the crew, info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Ask for a demo, ask for information, or check them out on social media and YouTube. There's plenty of content out there that shows you exactly what the affordable standpipe prop can do for you. And I'm just curious, here we are almost 3 years later or almost 4 years later now from that fire. You retired in 2020. You have time to kind of reflect. The dust has settled. You've been vindicated on the civil service panel, right? That they found you, they overturned that, which is some vindication for you, at least in the legality side of it, right? And it doesn't tarnish your career as badly because this has happened. It kind of vindicated you that you did what you were expected and supposed to do. But the dust has settled now. What does it look like for you? Like, what did this do to you in your fire service journey? I mean, you love the job. You still love the job. We were talking about it before, and we're going to get to where you are today. But it had to be a very bumpy road for you.
It was. Honestly, I had a conversation with my wife, ran some numbers. I'm like, can I step away from this completely at this point? Like, I kind of, I had been, I guess it's probably 2014. I think the slowest engine I've been on at that point was about 3,800 runs a year, right when I got promoted to lieutenant. Went back to close to 5,000 engine, another 5,000 engine, and then close to another one as a captain. I was exhausted. I had a little girl. She's now 5. She's, nice. She was a year and a half, 2 years old at the time. And, all she wants to do and doesn't care daddy's tired on a Saturday morning.
That's right.
And that was beating me down a little bit. And, part of me, I've had this conversation several different times in the last couple of years, but like everybody I know, like these guys raised 4, 5, 6 kids on the job doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my buddies like, we all had kids. We all had newborns at home. Get up, get off your ass kind of thing. But could they have done it better? Would they change it if they could go back and do it again to be a little bit better rested? And that's kind of where, when I started wrapping all that into it, I had an opportunity to take a job in another department that I needed some time to think about.
Yeah.
And so I had a torn ligament in my elbow. I got fixed. I had to have 6 weeks off for that. So I burned some sick leave, got my elbow fixed, did some reflecting. I was home with my family. My wife was out of school because of COVID. My daughter's home. So like literally spent 6 weeks with them every day in the spring of 20, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And when, everything kept pointing to take this other position.
Sure.
And, I never wanted my career to end in Atlanta the way that it did, for personal reasons, financial reasons. And I love the city. I loved being a fireman downtown. That's still who I am. I loved it. I wouldn't trade. If you would have told me the day that I started in the fire service that my path was going to go this way, I'd do it again in a heartbeat, all of it. Yep. Are there some changes I would have made? 100%. But for overall, I would take 99% of it over again. And so it took a little bit of thinking and some time. And when it came down to it, if I was single and didn't have a family to support, and the selfish me would have wrote it out, and I probably, it took 2 years to get it overturned. So I would have had to deal with that and the financial implications from that.
Sure.
But if it wasn't for my family, I probably would have stuck it out. But I had a really good opportunity. I told you a little bit ago, a friend of mine basically threw me a life ring that I didn't know I needed. He was like, come on up here, rest. Let us, you deserve to be taken care of. You've proved your point. You've done your time downtown. Come take it easy. And that was the decision that was made at a family level, professional level.
I get it.
But it had to happen. It just got to that point where it was time.
Yeah.
And I don't regret that one either. I did for a long time. Like, man, did I make the right decision? Should I have stuck it out? And it's just, when you really sit down and start looking at the brass tacks of it and weighing the pros and cons, it was far and away the decision that needed to be made.
Yeah. Do you feel that leading up to you finding that soul searching of being home for those 6 weeks while you're fixing your elbow and spending time with your kids and so on, did you have, or do you have any resentment, or did you feel that the system failed you in the department that you truly loved and you gave so much to?
It wasn't. It wasn't. I shouldn't say not then. The biggest problem I had was immediately in the shifts immediately following the fire.
Yeah.
So obviously tragic incident. Um, that call, I think she was the seventh rescue I had some sort of hands on
Hmm.
in my career.
Wow.
One of them walked out of the hospital. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
They're not frequent,
Right. Right.
Why that one bothered me, I don't know. There's a handful of circumstances that I won't get into that maybe contributed to that.
Right.
But I was not in a good headspace for
Yeah.
a couple weeks after that. And in the midst of it, I was in contact with our EAP, Employee Assistance Program, with a psychologist downtown, and already had a good relationship with her. Was talking. Obviously they come out anytime there's a fire fatality, and so going through that whole thing. And I spoke to her one day, and I think it was my second or third shift back, and she's like, "Why are you at work?" I was like, "I don't. What do you mean?" And she goes, "Well, we gave the guys from Engine 22, we gave them 72 hours off, like decompression time." And I'm like, okay. And she's like, let me work on this. This is 9 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
beginning of the shift.
Right.
I think I left to go home about 8 o'clock that night.
Mm.
And my 3 shifts off to quote decompress, I was getting phone calls every day saying I was being reassigned pending a fit for duty test.
Yikes.
Then I was going to be put on, I was being charged sick leave and not, administrative leave with pay. Then I was going to be reassigned to training pending a medical evaluation. I mean, every day I was getting phone calls from one chief or another chief saying, "Hey, don't shoot the messenger. Here's what we're being told." And I'll be honest with you, it wasn't anybody's fault. There was no policy for this. They didn't know what to do. The fire chief was out of town. His first deputy was in charge, and I equate it to this: anytime there's a police officer involved shooting, what happens? They're on desk duty for a couple of days, pending an investigation, cool off time, whatever you want to call it. It's no different. Now, why they had such a huge deal? They're like, well, we're going to dock you 72 hours of sick leave. Well, I'm sure you're aware it takes like 9 months to build up 72 hours of sick leave.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so I was more disappointed when I went back to work. We had our time off. We had to, myself and the 2 members from the engine had to go meet with the fire chief and the ops deputy and have just a little powwow, a 2-hour meeting before they released us back to work. And I was like, listen, I just don't want this to happen again. Like, you're supposed to give me time off to decompress, but every day I'm being told I'm being reassigned. I'm going to have to do a fit for duty. Like, y'all were harassing me every single day with different pay stuff. And, again, and the fire chief was, for all of his shortcomings with this whole thing, he's like, "Lou, I'm really sorry. We didn't know how to handle this. We didn't, and I'm like, listen, I'm not a policy writing guy, but if you'll give me the tools and the time and tell me what you want, I'll write the policy. I don't want this to happen to somebody else."
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, we're going to get on that. Of course, never heard anything. And I'd be shocked if they ever put a policy in place. So that was more of a letdown than anything else, was just like how they handled it in the 2 weeks post incident.
Yeah.
There was another huge, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, did you notice a change in your demeanor, in your attitude, in your approach to the guys in the firehouse, to your family? Like, I mean, I can't even imagine what's going through your head through all of this, right? Especially when you're sticking to your guns and saying, I didn't do anything wrong. I would do this again. And then, now there's struggles, right? Because like now so maybe just talk to me a little bit about that. When did you recognize, or did your wonderful wife go, "Hey, Danny, you're not yourself"?
No, she didn't. She never really had that. I don't think we had that conversation, but no, I saw it. I mean, I've made mention of it before, but I think it was my first night off after the fire. I don't ever watch the local news. I haven't watched it in years. It's just a disaster no matter where you are.
Sure is.
And I just so happened to turn on the news, or we were turning something off that my daughter had on, and 5 o'clock news, and there's her picture plastered all over the news. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, and it's like, again, nobody's fault, but it's like, okay, now there's a face with it. It wasn't, unfortunately, when you pull a couple homeless people out of a building that nobody really knows at the time, that doesn't make the news. The pictures don't make the news.
That's right.
There's this great grandmother with her face and her church photos and this and that. And it was a kick in the gut. Again, it wasn't anything we did, but it still didn't make things any easier. And about 2 o'clock that morning, I sat straight up in bed and heard smoke alarms going off in my house and thought my house was on fire.
Oh my God.
And went into full freaking panic mode. And I was talking to my best friend who's a captain downtown. I'm like, look, man, I don't know what PTSD is, but something's going on in my head that I don't have any control over. And I I wasn't sitting there with like suicidal ideations by any stretch of the imagination,
Right.
but I couldn't shake that picture out of my head,
Wow.
and the picture of her on the news and
Sure.
then how I found her or left her
Yeah.
still bothers me to this day. I've learned to work around it,
Yeah.
but I understand why people get to the point where they're sitting there with a gun in their mouth or thinking about it, because sometimes you just can't
Yeah.
get things out of your head. And it scared the shit out of me. I mean, it really scared me. And that was part of the reason I think of me also stepping away from the city, was to kind of remove that stressor from my life and just be done.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that whole thing was pretty tough. She was really, my wife was great. She was there with me the whole time, and just, she deserves a lot of this credit too. I don't know what it's like to have to deal with a husband that does this.
Right.
You're gone for 24 hours, you come home shot out, then you go through this whole thing. And, she's been through a couple different things with me with Atlanta, of
Sure.
just the stress
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot on the back end that they don't get any credit for, but
Sure.
she, it was a rough couple weeks. We spoke about James Gearing earlier, does another
Yeah.
fire department
Right.
podcast. A friend
Mm-hmm.
of mine introduced me to his.
Absolutely.
And that guy pulled me out of a hole. Honestly,
Wow.
like, I started listening to a lot of different podcasts and just kind of went down a rabbit hole, and it led me to a lot of, education and learning about sleep deprivation
Sure.
and PTS and fire service. And I would never, got a lot of buddies that were in the military, a couple guys that were in special operations. I would never put what we do as a fire service into the same bucket that they do, of what they did in global war on terrorism and everything else. But I learned that it's not what you did or what caused the trauma. It's just how each individual person processes.
That's right.
And for whatever reason, I thought I was doing something cool and kind of coined the phrase, but I'm sure somebody else did. But it's like, you got a cup of coffee that's a little too full and mine's spilled.
Yeah.
And now you got to clean up the spill, which is a daily thing still, but you work through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I thank you first off for sharing that, because I think that little bit of insight into what you were personally dealing with can certainly, touch people that are listening. And because I'm sure there are people that are going through some very similar struggles or have, and to find their way, and for you to, face it, talk about it, and find your way out of it, I think is very powerful. So thank you for sharing that part of it. When you're home for those weeks with your family, you decide to move on from Atlanta. I'm sure, like you said, man, you were in 15 years. You still had 10 years to go with the city of Atlanta, but you made that choice and you put yourself and your family first. That had to be, I'm sure, in retrospect, it was the right decision, but at the time, I'm sure that was a struggle of your own.
Yeah, it's still,
It's still,
it was. I still like, damn it.
Yeah, I get it.
No.
I get it. But with that though, did it give you some of that mental healing that you needed, some of that downtime, some of that refocusing, maybe prioritizing different things in life? Talk to me a little bit about that transition.
Dude, it was wild. I went down to my last assignment, cooked the guys steak dinner. Anytime you retire, you cook the guys steaks, right?
Yep.
Even though I was retiring very young and very early, I still owed it to them. And a good friend of mine, Justin and I worked, pretty much our whole careers together. Same station, different shifts, bunch of fires together on swaps, overtime. He's still a very good friend of mine. He was covering the engine for me as a lieutenant while I was gone, while I was on sick leave with my elbow. So my last shift, I go down and I'm like cleaning my locker out with a smile on my face.
Wow.
And I never thought, until you asked me this a minute ago, I remember, and he's just sitting there with this like blank stare.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think either one of us ever knew that we were going to leave early.
Mm-hmm.
And he's second generation Atlanta fireman, hell of a guy. And, we're all sitting there and he's like, I was like, here, man, here's an extra polo shirt. Here's a sweatshirt, giving away stuff. Cause I'm like, I don't need it. I don't want it.
Yeah.
And it was like the biggest weight off my back to just not have to deal with. And maybe, a lot of people are like, well, maybe you took the easy way out. Maybe I did. I don't know, but it was right for me. And just being out of there and knowing that I did not have to get back on an engine downtown and be scrutinized again for anything was a very big relief for me personally on a stress level. But the funny thing is, on the flip side of that, for the next several weeks, I'm like, damn, did I make the right decision?
Of course.
As soon as this happened, all the riots kicked off downtown.
Oh yeah.
My buddy was one of the fire trucks that was all over the news, getting bricks thrown through
Yeah.
the windshield. And
Yeah.
you know where I wanted to be?
Right
there with him.
Yeah, I get it.
But so it's like all these things happen for a reason. But yeah, it was the reflection was good. It needed to happen. And then when I got up to the next apartment, it was a huge dude. I told everybody, I was like, you laugh. It's going to take me 2 years to get caught up on sleep. And it really did. Like, I woke up there back in April and I'm like,
wow.
like, I felt like I was a bear coming out of a cave.
Yeah.
You just get so shot on little to no sleep, and it just, a cumulative effect is just really, really bad for your decision-making processes, your attitude, your body recovery. It just,
all of it.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah,
So,
well, I mean, but you're taking care of yourself. I mean, you focused, where you spend so much time focusing on everyone else, we neglect ourselves, right? And then over time, when something happens like this, when you kind of circle your wagons and pull in to the middle, you start to reflect on yourself and you realize that you need some self-care as well. And so, and I could only imagine what every time you hear those guys go to a fire, I'm sure your blood pressure goes up a little bit. There's no doubt. But
oh, dude, I still listen to him. If I know anything's
Of
going on downtown, I jump
course.
on Broadcastify and I'm buffing it.
Absolutely. No, I get it. But you can't take that out of you, right? Like, guys that love this job love the job. And it's nice to see that you still love the job. My concern was, and what I prompted you earlier about was, did you fall out of love with the job? Did you have, when you were going through some of your struggles and healing from all of this, did the job change for you? Because
I'm not gonna say that I was chipper, ready to go every single day that
Sure.
I came into work. Did I come in a few times and after 22 years on the job, and I'm setting my boots and coat on the floor in the back seat, did I not go, man, what, did I make the right call?
Yeah.
And thankfully I will say this, the fire chief that brought me up there and the company officers that I had while I was assigned there kept me there. If it had been anywhere else with any other combination of people, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I might be out of the job completely. But if it hadn't have been, the timing was right, the officers were right, the fire chief was right. Like, I'm telling you, it was a life ring. And thankfully I was able to go up there and reset. There was no and again, I should mention too that I'd worked for this organization about 10 years ago, part-time, for about 5 years.
Right.
So I knew the guys up there. It wasn't, it was kind of like going to your grandma's house for the summer. I knew the guys really well. It wasn't home, but it was going to be home. And I got comfortable there. And I truly, dude, I never intended on leaving, and it just kind of, circumstances, things happen. My career's taken a bunch of different turns. I saw some of the guys I originally got hired with when I was 19 years old a couple of weeks ago. They're like, "Are you going to stick around at one place for a little while?" I'm like, "Hey, man, I would love to go back and not have had this happen, but you gotta stick and move, and adjust as necessary." And that's kind of what I had to do. I had to make decisions for myself and my family, and just
you mentioned
got to keep your feet moving, I guess.
Yeah, you mentioned a word to me earlier that sticks out in the last 20 minutes of this podcast. It's all about resiliency, right? You mentioned the word resiliency and how that word resonates with you. And we don't know. We never know how life is going to play out for us, right? You wake up the next day and something happens and like you, it thrusts you into a situation, a national spotlight, dealing with all the nonsense that comes with that. Your career is now drastically different than what you thought it was going to look like 22 years ago or 15 years ago, whatever it was. Like, things change, but I think it's fun because it's one chapter after another, and you get to write the rules in a way,
Yeah. I didn't think about it like that, but you're right.
Talk to me about where you are today with the job. I mean, are you in the same position? You might not be going out the door 25 times a tour, but
thank God. Dude, we affectionately joke, but I have no problem. I have entered full gummy bear status a couple of years ago.
Gummy bear status. I love that.
Man, I'm telling you, I'm like the soft gummy bear you find in your kid's pants pocket. Like,
That's
I'm not
hilarious.
even like a fresh gummy bear. But no, all jokes aside, man, if I was running out the door like I was my last couple assignments down, I'd be sucking my thumb in a corner somewhere. Like it's that time has passed. I'm glad I got to experience it,
Sure.
but it's really bad for you, and my family likes it a lot better the way that I am
Yeah.
now. All that said, back middle of summer, there it was a department that I ran with at my last job, city department that was transitioning from a part-time model to a full-time model. And 7 firehouses currently. We're going to start on number 8 here pretty soon.
Nice.
But they were hiring it to start the full-time process. They hired in 21 captains. I think I heard somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 applicants, and they picked up. I ran through the hoops, and a very close friend of mine and mentor was one of my captains downtown, is a battalion chief up there. Currently, he retired from the city of Atlanta with 30 years and went up to this department as a DC. Knew a couple other guys on the command staff there, had known them for years. We never worked together, but just taking classes. And metro area is huge, but
Sure.
it's still very small.
Yeah, I get
on the scale of fire departments. And initially when I spoke to my old boss, I'm like, what do you think? Is there going to be any negative effect of what happened in Atlanta? Because if it's going to be a detriment, I'm not going to waste their time. I'm not going to waste my time. I don't want to get my hopes up. And
That's right.
I think you're going to be good. So, man, I jumped through the hoops, application, physical agility test, interview, and I'm very proud to say that I was selected for the position.
Yeah.
With another 20 guys.
Nice.
And so we came to the field in December, I think the 12th. And so we are the starting of this rather good sized organization going full time. So we're going to try and pick up some more personnel towards the end of the year. And I think the city wants it full tilt boogie by 2027.
Wow.
So it's going to be a pretty monumental undertaking. It's going to be a lot of things happening really quick, but yeah, very happy. I feel reinvigorated in the job again. It's been a long time since I've been excited to go back to work and not dreading pulling out at 5 o'clock in the morning to leave to go to work and seeing a full moon, knowing I'm gonna get my teeth kicked in. Now it's just, it's nice, man. It's a slower pace, but there's still a lot going on. I think it's been a great move.
I think what's cool about that too is you're in at the bottom, meaning like you're going to help build a foundation of an area that is growing, and you're going to be able to put your stamp on that. That's pretty cool, man.
I never, until we were sitting there day one and they're talking about building out the organization and fixing policies, and the city of Atlanta, it's a very structured organization.
Right.
Contrary to popular belief, it is a very structured organization with a lot of policies and a lot of guidelines that again, contrary to popular belief, I thrive in that environment. Like I like going, okay, this is what's going on. Let me go over to this box. Let me come down 2 boxes. Here's what we do.
Well, it's expectations, right? It's expectations, knowing what they expect from you.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so to be able to help facilitate that and be, on the ground floor with getting everything, they keep referring to it as a build out, which I think is a really good term, but there's a lot of stuff. There's no apparatus committee. There's no turnout gear committee. There's no uniform committee. There's no hiring board yet. So it's like, we got to build all this stuff out. And here's the thing too, is like come July 1st, if the budget gets approved, which I have no doubt that it will be, we got to hire 3 more captains, 9 lieutenants, and I think a dozen or so firemen.
Wow.
So it's moving quick, and I'm enjoying it. I haven't been this busy at work, not running calls, but just doing stuff.
Yeah.
In maybe ever. I mean, it was just every day. There's always something going on, which I love. I enjoy it. We're not super, super busy. I think I saw the run totals the other day. Our engine was somewhere around 1,300, and I think the truck was about 800 runs last year.
Yeah.
And the rescue, we've got a rescue, an engine, truck, air truck, boat. So we got a bunch of equipment that I find we can't get that stuff checked off till almost after lunch. So my day disappears, but it's man, it's been great. The command staff has been fantastic. They give you a lot of leeway, to make decisions and just are like, handle it. You're hired to be a company officer, do it. And I'm like, wow, novel concept.
What a novel concept.
It's been great, man. I'm very, very happy.
Well, you know what? I'm drawing some parallels here, and what I think is really cool is, way back when you were sitting in the chief's office in Atlanta and you said, hey, there's no policy on this. I get that. If you want me to write that for you, I'm willing to do that. And you never heard back from them. And now you're in a position where you've gone through a lot of personal struggles throughout your career, highs and lows, but you bring so much experience to a growing, budding department like this who's on their build out, quote unquote. And now you can put your stamp on the build out because you've been through some of it. So maybe you couldn't write that policy, down in Metro Atlanta, but you can certainly make an impact in the department you're in today. And I think that that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's going to be nice. And one thing I think is going to be really cool is you don't have to go with Atlanta, just turned over 141 years, I think.
Yeah.
So it's or maybe they got 141 coming up, but you don't have to, and you've been around the job long enough to know, like, fixing outdated policies, because whether they're just flat out of date or things we don't do anymore, like that, putting that battleship in reverse is really difficult.
It's impossible.
But I would not argue that. But to be able to get it right the first time,
yes.
And, between the command staff there and the other 20 captains, the vastness of experience based on departments and years of service is so wide. I think we're going to be able to really knock them out of the park.
Awesome.
Are we going to win them all? No. But I really do believe, like, I haven't had this much faith in a group of people in an organization a long time. And I'm sure people are going to, he's drinking the Kool-Aid. That's fine. Maybe I'll be proved wrong. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right.
It's the most delicious Kool-Aid you've ever been served. Right?
So far, it tastes pretty good.
Damn right.
But, to be able to get the policies right the first time, I think is going to be really neat. And to have a hand in that's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to being a part of the hiring process moving forward, to really, make sure that we get the best that we can get, the best we can afford, given, right? That's always a factor.
Sure.
But it's just a different feel. It's a different vibe. And it's, nothing against, it's a smaller, about a city of about 100,000 people, 10,000 runs a year over 7 firehouses. It's not huge, but it's got a really tight knit community feel. I was very lucky to get assigned to one of the main fire stations that's right in a little historic downtown area. Mm-hmm. I've never been in a station like that was a neighborhood firehouse before. To have people come up, we've got a really cool museum in the front of the building, and people come by and kids come by and look at the trucks when it's, we're starting to get in some nice weather here finally. And so, man, it's been great. It's
awesome.
Super busy.
Yeah.
But overall, man, it was probably one of the best decisions I've made in my career.
That's fantastic.
I'm thankful for that. And again, if everything hadn't happened in Atlanta, I would not have been able to put in for this, because I would have been, handcuffed by a pension.
That's right.
So everything happens for a reason, man. I do believe that for sure.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because I want to start wrapping a little bit. We've been going for about an hour. Legacy is important to me. I think about everything that I do and on the daily grind for National Fire Radio, and the content we put out, the people I talk to. It's very important to me that when I walk away from this thing in another 50 years, that the legacy remains, that we did everything we thought we should have and more. We promoted the job. We did the best we could. What does legacy mean to you, and what do you want your legacy to be for your kids and great-grandkids to see?
I guess we can hit on the kids in a second, on a professional level, I guess, with work. I remember talking to my very first battalion chief I had, and I think he kind of put the thought in my head. Maybe he said it, I don't recall, but like, are you going to get 4 guys on an engine as an officer to all think your way and to just go, hey man, we agree with 100% of what you're doing? No. Right. But if you can plant a couple seeds with this guy, a couple seeds with this guy, maybe a handful more seeds with this other guy, and then they move out, they get promoted a couple times. So your legacy kind of spreads that way. Is it my ideas and thoughts? No. Is it the way that I wash a panel on the ladder truck? No. But you just try and plant some seeds with guys and hope that they promote and take that same drive, that same mission, the same thought process, and teach it to their guys. So it's kind of an unsaid thing.
I get it.
One thing that a very good friend of mine and I have talked about is, with this job, you can have a stellar career, be a legend in your organization. You can do all these things. And the minute you walk out the door, you're gone.
Yeah.
And they'll put another rear end in your seat with the same rank, and the machine will move on. You step off the ride after 30 years, and the thing keeps rolling.
Yeah. It does.
And that's hard for a lot of guys that I've seen over the years. One of my captains, like I still see him pretty regular, my old captain, and he's like, man, every time I heard sirens, he's like, it teared me up for a couple of years, because he left. He got pensioned out on an injury. He's like, I wasn't ready to leave yet. He didn't have that transition period.
Yep.
And so yeah, I think that you kind of just get a couple guys to think the same way that you think, and then they take it and add on to it, put their spin on it, and give it to their guys when they get promoted.
Yeah, I love that.
As far as my family's concerned,
yeah,
I just, again, I hate being cliche, but you just try, do what you say. Don't tell your kids one thing and then you go and do something different. Am I always, the most? Do I follow that rule 100% of the time? Probably not. But, on an overall thing, I like to think that I do. I try to.
Yes.
Do I waver? Do I falter? 100%. I think everybody does.
We all do.
But do what you tell them to do. Be that example. Be the person that you want them to be. Let them see that. Are they going to see your shortcomings and your mistakes? Absolutely. And how you stand up and dust your knees off and move on from that is a huge thing to me. I'll be first one to tell you, I am not good at that. My ability, I can recover quickly, but I don't always, I have sometimes can have a short temper, which is, again, something I work on daily.
Sure.
But, I try. My little girl's getting older every day, and she keeps equating it. She goes, Daddy, we're one day closer to summer than we were yesterday.
That's awesome.
100% true.
I love that.
But she's one day closer to being gone.
Yeah.
And one day older than she was yesterday. And I don't want her to see. I am trying to correct myself for her before it really. Again, I'm going to make mistakes. She's going to see it, but how you pick up from those and how you move on and
that's
how you
they
decide
learn
to move on.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to convey to. I've got a couple nieces and nephews and, friends' kids.
Yeah.
We've got a very tight-knit circle of friends that we hang out with a good bit. All the kids are under 8. Well, I guess they're all probably under about 12 now. And just try and, be a good role model for them, and try and do the right thing. And again, you're going to falter, and how you pick up from that it says a lot, I think, on who you are and how you manage that.
Well, I couldn't ask you for to deliver that any better, because what you just said sums up this whole last hour and sums up who you are as an individual, because you live that every day. Your story you just shared with us today, and how you went through all your trials and tribulations through the Atlanta Fire Department and to where you are today, reinvigorated with the job again. It's how you pick yourself back up and put yourself back on the track. And brother, I can't thank you enough for joining me today, man. What a powerful story. I absolutely appreciate you sharing, everything that you've gone through and who you are, and Danny would go. Danny did go, and you'd go again. And brother, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Jeremy. I really appreciate it, buddy. It was a pleasure. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah,
it's a different spin on it. And everybody knows one end of it, and I've kind of distanced myself from these things.
Sure.
But when we talk, you're wanting to know the other side of it, and what's happened in the last 4 years was a different spin that I wanted to be a part of. So thank you so much for calling and putting this thing together.
My man, you're a lot more than one night. One night doesn't define an individual, and everything that and the fallout from all of that into where you are today and who you are today. That's the guy that I want to shake a hand and have a pop with. So, brother, I appreciate you.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we will, for sure. I can't wait. And thank you for spending an hour with me today, man. It's just a blast, and I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value out of this conversation today, and I think it certainly will help some people. And we went down a couple different holes, and I thought it was a great conversation. So I appreciate you. You're a new friend and brother, and I appreciate you, and I look forward to shaking your hand, pal. Appreciate it.
Hey man, me too. And keep doing what you're doing. You got, you're putting out some really good content, and your name and your brand is growing, and you're doing some good stuff. So keep it moving, man.
It's easy to do with great guys like you. So I appreciate it. Stay right here. I'm just going to sign off, but don't hang up. All right. Stay right where you are.
You got it.
Cool. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to the National Fire Radio podcast. Danny Dwyer, Danny would go. Danny did go. He will go again and again and again. It's who he is. Thanks for tuning in. Take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse, take it back to the kitchen table and talk about it, because when we talk about the job, we're making the job better. Email us at podcast@nationalfireradio.com for any of your ideas, thoughts, or inquiries about the podcast. And thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your support. We appreciate the National Fire Radio community, and we'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.